Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how much we love a good deep dive? And today we're going deep, like way back in time.
Time travel. I'm in.
Hmm.
But are we talking pyramids? Gladiators?
Even more intriguing, we're digging into the hidden history of women in ancient societies. Like, what if everything we thought we knew about power structures was totally different?
Ooh, okay, I'm intrigued. What are we looking at? Some kind of lost city ruled by women.
Not quite a lost city, but we're going even further back, challenging some fundamental assumptions about ancient cultures.
Okay, I'm hooked already. Lay it on me. What's on the syllabus for today's deep dive?
We're diving into this fascinating book, Cyborgs versus the Earth Goddess.
Whoa, cyborgs versus the Earth Goddess. That's a mouthful. Who wrote that? It's by Dr. Seenarine. He's a scholar of women's studies and social systems, so he comes at this with a really interesting perspective.
Okay, so what's the book all about? What's Dr. Seenarine's big idea?
He's suggesting that many ancient societies might have actually been gynocentric, meaning female-centered, like it totally flips the script on what we're usually taught, right?
Cynocentric societies. Okay, I've got to admit, that's not usually the first thing that comes to mind when I think about ancient history.
Right, but that's what's so cool about this. He calls this whole thing eco-gynocentrism, where societies are structured around respect for nature and hold on to your hats, female leadership.
Respect for nature, female leadership. Interesting link. Okay, I'm listening. Where do we start?
Well, he starts with this idea of the Earth Goddess, this recurring figure in mythologies across the globe.
Oh yeah, like Mother Earth and stuff, right? I feel like pretty much every culture has some version of that.
You're totally right, and that's kind of the point. Dr. Seenarine says the fact that the Earth Goddess pops up everywhere suggests that reverence for feminine power and its connection to nature wasn't just some random thing. It might have actually been a widespread belief system.
Okay, I see where he's going with this. So
Yeah.
it's not just about the goddesses themselves, but what they represent.
Exactly. So we're talking about Africa, Australia, the Americas, Asia, Europe. Every corner of the world has these powerful female figures in their mythologies.
Okay, so give me an example. What were these goddesses like? What kind of powers did they have?
Well, let's start with Africa. There's Ocean, a Yoruba goddess. Now, she's associated with love and beauty, sure, but she's also a fierce protector, not just some delicate flower.
A protector goddess. Okay, interesting. So they weren't all just about fertility and nurturing.
Not at all. Then there's Mami Wada, a water spirit, but she guides women through rites of passage. So, again, a different take on the typical water deity.
Totally different. Sounds like they were more well-rounded, more complex than we often give them credit for.
Right, like they embody this fuller spectrum of what we consider feminine, not just the gentle, nurturing aspects, but strength, power, protection, guidance, the whole palette.
Makes sense. Okay, I'm ready for another example. What about other parts of the world?
All right, hop over to Australia, and you've got Jalinia, a creator goddess, and then there's the rainbow snake, who brings those life-giving rains, so fertility, abundance, all that good stuff.
Okay, so already we're seeing all this diversity, and that's just 2 continents. We've got like, what, 5 more to go? This could take a while.
Haha, yeah, it's a big world out there, full of goddesses. But you're right, we're already seeing these powerful female figures linked to nature, creation, even protection. And it makes you wonder, were these societies really that different? Like, were they truly women-led?
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. So we've got these badass goddesses, but what does that actually tell us about how these ancient societies might have functioned?
That is the million-dollar question, right? And to answer that, we've got to go a little deeper into some of these mythologies.
All right, lead the way. What else we got?
Well, let's jump over to the Near East for a second. Dr. Seenarine talks a lot about this Sumerian goddess, Inanna. Now, she was definitely connected to love and fertility, but get this, she was also associated with warfare.
Hold up. A warrior goddess. Now that's what I'm talking about.
Right. It totally flips the script. Turns out Inanna isn't alone. We see the same thing with Ishtar in other Mesopotamian cultures. Love and war, all wrapped up in one powerful goddess.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we're not just talking about nurturing Earth mothers here. These goddesses were the real deal, embodying power in all its messy, complicated glory.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, did these multifaceted goddesses reflect societies where power itself wasn't so rigidly defined by gender?
It's a fascinating thought. But if that was the case, what happened? How do we go from goddess worship and potentially gynocentric societies to, well, the world we live in now?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like we had this totally different blueprint for society, and then boom, somewhere along the way it all went sideways.
So what happened? Was it like one big event or more of a slow fade?
Well, Dr. Seenarine doesn't give a definitive answer, but he does point to some pretty major shifts that might have played a role.
Okay, so what kind of shifts are we talking about here? What tipped the scales?
Well, he talks about the rise of agriculture. Think about it. You go from these nomadic hunter-gatherer groups where sharing resources was pretty much essential to these settled farming communities where suddenly you have a surplus of food. Right, which creates this whole new power dynamic because now it's like, who controls the food? Who gets to decide how it's distributed?
Exactly. And it wasn't just food. Dr. Centering also points to the domestication of animals as another potential factor.
Because once you start domesticating animals, you're learning to control nature in a whole new way, right?
Exactly. And sadly, that desire for control may have extended beyond animals. It might have even influenced how some men started to view women.
Wow, I see where you're going with this. It's like, if you can control nature, why not control women's bodies, women's reproductive power?
It's a chilling thought, but it's a connection Dr. Centerine makes, and it's pretty hard to ignore.
It really is. And it's like that desire to control just keeps expanding outward, right?
Right. And this is where things get even more complicated because you have the emergence of organized warfare.
Which, let's face it, throughout history, warfare and violence have always been pretty closely linked to masculinity, haven't they?
Totally. And it's not just about brute force. As societies become more complex, you start to see the rise of these codified legal systems and religious structures, often dominated by men.
It's like these systems of control, these hierarchies, they become more and more formalized, embedded in the very fabric of society. And where does that leave the earth goddesses?
That's the thing, isn't it? They start to fade into the background. It's almost like this rewriting of history, where those earlier voices, those feminine perspectives, get silenced.
Which brings me to the big question, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are wondering this too. Why does any of this matter to us today? What does this ancient history have to do with our modern world? It's kind of mind-blowing, right? Thinking about how different things might have been.
It really is. But like you said, this isn't just about ancient history.
Exactly. It's about understanding how we got to where we are now.
Which, if you think about it, is exactly what Dr. Centerine is getting at in this book. He's not trying to romanticize the past or anything.
Yeah, it's not about going back to some kind of goddess-worshipping utopia.
It's about asking the hard questions. Like, how did we get from there to here?
And knowing what we know now, where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for us?
Well, for me, it's about looking at the challenges we're facing today, like climate change, inequality, you name it.
And realizing they're not just modern problems.
Exactly. They're rooted in this ancient shift. This turning away from a worldview that valued interconnectedness. The earth, women, it was all connected.
So by understanding that connection, maybe we can find new solutions or at least new ways of thinking about the problems.
That's the hope, right? If we can understand what went wrong, we can start making different choices. It's like that old saying, what is it? Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
So true. And even though those ancient societies weren't perfect, there's something really powerful about those earth goddess figures.
I know what you mean. It's
Yeah.
like they represent this whole different way of valuing the feminine, valuing nature, valuing balance itself.
And those values, they feel so relevant today, especially with everything going on in the world.
Totally. Makes you wonder what would happen if we could reclaim some of that ancient wisdom, that reverence for the earth, for the feminine. What would that look like in our modern world?
Now, that is a really good question, and I think it's the perfect note to end on. So, to our amazing listeners out there, what did you think? Did anything resonate with you?
Yeah, we want to hear from you. What connections are you making to your own lives, to the world around you?
Keep those conversations going because who knows, maybe together we can start to shift the narrative. Write a new chapter in human history.
Dear here.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.